Adaptación fiel e interactiva de la obra de H.P. Lovecraft que se centra en el ambiente y la historia. Ok. Ah, no puedo mover mucho. Ok.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
No puedo mover. Ah, no. De tu partida con elementos interactivos. Unos te permitirán avanzar en tu aventura, otros te otorgarán información interesante sobre el relato corto en el que se basa el juego. Ok, contexto histórico del autor. Parte de esa información estará oculta. Para poder encontrar todos los secretos tendrás que enfocar tu mirada y buscar en el símbolo arcano. O sea, esto y esto. Ah, claro. Con el mouse. Ok. Zoom con... Ah. Oh. Ay, se mueve muy rápido.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
No, señor, no. No.
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Huh. Ah, esta es la historia. Morfina. Se empezó a utilizar en el siglo XIX y era práctica habitual para calmar. Claro. Es la guerra civil estadounidense. En la Primera Guerra Mundial, además se vendió sin restricciones hasta 1914. Mierda. Se hizo más popular tras la invención de la jeringuilla hipodérmica en torno al 1854. Friedrich Zeituna, el farmacéutico que aisló la sustancia por primera vez, la llamó Morphium, en honor a Morfeo, el dios griego de los sueños. Ok. La época en la que se publicó Dagon, la adicción a la morfina, ya era un problema de primer nivel en los Estados Unidos. Mira vos. Y nada más, ¿no? Supongo que sigue la historia.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Ok.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation. So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Ay, para, no estoy leyendo nada. Ok, fue capturado. La bandera. Los hunos eran nómadas de la Asia Central que establecían su dominio en Europa e invadieron el Imperio Romano en el siglo V después de Cristo. Se conocía como guerreros letales y crueles, expertos en ataques rápidos que también desarrollaban potentes arcos compuestos, lazos y armas de asedio primitivas. Los británicos utilizaron la palabra uno como el sinónimo de alemán para hacer hincapié en su brutalidad. No sabía. Sin embargo, el término se originó cuando el emperador Guillermo II de Alemania dio un discurso a sus tropas el 27 de julio de 1900, antes de marcarse a China. Si alguna vez os encontráis con el enemigo, sigue para allá. ¡Oh!
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Muy bien. Claro, se escapó solo.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator.
Claro.
Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
No veía nada, estaba en el medio de la nada, en el agua. Sigo.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
Ok. Acá sigue. Seguro se le terminó el agua. A ver. Bueno. Sí. Es agua, ¿no?
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
Ok. Claro, se estaba deshidratando.
The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know.
Ok.
For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Ay.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished.
Y sí, ¿quién nos asustar con estos calamares?
For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core.
Qué linda.
The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
¿Dónde están tus pies? ¡Ah! Esto es la historia. Acá está. Orígenes de Dagon. Parece inspirado en Cabeza de pescado, una novela corta de Irving S. Cobb que versa sobre afinidades sobrenaturales entre un imbécil híbrido y el extraño pez de un lago solitario. Y el sueño de Lovecraft sobre una extraña isla que emerge del océano y que lo obliga a arrastrarse por el cieno que cubre su superficie. Soñé toda mi travesía arrastrándome por el infecto lodo. Bien puedo sentir cómo intenta tragarme. En defensa de Dagon. H.P. Lovecraft. El interés de Lovecraft en este tema se debe a la aversión que sentía hacia el pescado. Y hacia los héroes marinos, según sus propias palabras. He odiado el pescado y temido el mar y todo lo relacionado con él desde que tenía 2 años. Pero no encuentro qué experiencia me inoculó una aversión tan profunda, duradera, con respecto al mar y el marisco, claro. Muy bien. Bueno, seguimos, ¿no? Porque no hay nada más. El ruido.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position.
No sé.
Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths.
What the fuck?
So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might.
Okay.
Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Muy muertas no están, porque se siguen moviendo.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens.
Ay, no me deja. Mira el sol.
As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time.
Ok. O sea, con el sol se secó.
That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
Ok. Qué lindo.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease.
Ok, claro, con el sol se secó.
The odor
Lodo.
of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Ahí se sigue, sí. Quiero investigar. Ya está. Es que no hay nada. Bueno, sigamos. Ah. Y...
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
What the fuck? Son tipo alienígenas. Una ballena. Eso no es un alienígena. Ah. Bueno, sigamos.
That night I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
¿Qué cosa? Ah, la colina. Acá. Los horrores del océano. El creador de los mitos de Cthulhu y la ciudad submarina de R'lyeh estaba convencido de que no podía haber vida en el fondo oceánico porque la presión del agua lo hace inhabitable. Pero algunos bichos se adaptan, supongo. El fondo... No sé. A día de hoy sabemos que en los abismos más profundos del océano habita multitud, claro. El pez caracol en las Marianas es el pez que se ha encontrado a mayor profundidad y puede vivir hasta 8.000 metros de profundidad bajo la superficie marina. Mierda. A total oscuridad y presiones endiabladamente altas. Ok. Bueno, ya está. Sigamos.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance.
Bueno, o sea, de lejos siempre va a parecer más bajita.
An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface.
Oh.
Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill.
Bueno, dormir en barro.
I know not why my dreams were so wild that night.
Okay.
But ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more.
No.
Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And
no
in the glow
soñar
of
más.
the moon I saw
O sea, no quería
how
dormir
unwise
más.
I had been to travel by day.
¿Por qué imprudente?
Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy.
Ah. Bueno, claro. Y pero... Sí, bueno, puede ser.
Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me.
Bueno.
But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side
Ay,
into
no.
an immeasurable pit or canyon.
Qué horror. Es un volcán
Whose
entonces,
black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine.
¿no?
I felt myself on the edge of the world,
Ajá.
peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal
Uy.
night.
El calofrío.
Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness.
What the fuck?
As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
Ah. ¿Pero te vas a tirar? No me deja mirar más allá.
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent,
Bueno.
whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
Sí. Seguimos bajando. Se va a tropezar, se va a resbalar, algo va a
Urged
pasar.
on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon. That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself.
Parece, ¿no? Una piedra.
But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature.
Y está como muy perfecta para
A
que sea de la
closer
naturaleza.
scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
Aunque bueno, la naturaleza hace todo perfecto. Nada para investigar. No.
For
Sigamos.
despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith,
Sí.
whose
Sí, es
massive
un
bulk had
rectángulo
known the
muy...
workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures.
Ah,
Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
agua.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope.
Uy.
Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith,
Ciclopio.
on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
Sí.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most
Son
part of
criaturas del
conventionalized
mar, ¿no?
aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans,
Octopi.
mollusks, whales, and the like.
Claro.
Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world,
Sí.
but whose decomposing forms I had observed
Sí,
on
no.
the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Estos tallados. Dagon presenta muchos de los temas y métodos narrativos que Lovecraft empleó y se usaron en obras posteriores. Entre ellos se encuentra contar la historia a través de inscripciones, el uso de diarios o notas de los personajes, islas que emergen del mar, claro, Cthulhu, seres ficticios o deidades tomadas de mitologías o eventos reales.
Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men.
Sí, parecen...
Though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
Sí.
Or paying homage at some monolithic shrine, which appeared to be under the waves as well.
O sea, esta isla que emergió claramente estaba bajo la tierra, bajo el agua. Entonces el monolito también estaba bajo el agua.
Of their
O sea, sigue
faces
siendo el
and
mismo.
forms I dare not speak in detail.
Sus rostros no se ven. Su forma... Bueno. Este tiene... Ah, acá está la cara. ¿Ah?
The mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer.
Oh.
They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips. Glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background.
Okay.
For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Sí, ¿no? El bicho es enorme. O sea, si la ballena es grande, el bicho es igual que la ballena.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size.
Sí.
But in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
Bueno,
Some tribe
dioses.
whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Ok. Bueno, seguimos.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it.
¿Qué cosa?
With only a slight
Ay.
churn to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Vast, polyphemus-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds.
Qué lindo.
I think
¿Se desmayó?
then
Ah.
of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
Oh. Se olvidó de todo. Ahí se sigue. Ah, se me está moviendo todo. Bueno, sigamos.
I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
Esta es la ballena que mató el bicho.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
Uy.
When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital. Brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean.
Oh, ok.
In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention.
Y sí.
Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing. Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Bien, pará, ahí salgo, acá. Periodista, es una figura destacada del mundo del periodismo amateur. Ah, mira. Empezó a publicar su propio diario que se llamaba The Conservative, donde incluía comentarios sociopolíticos, poesía, relatos y críticas literarias escritas tanto por él como por otros autores. Howard era un escritor con mucho talento, pero también se tomaba muy en serio las críticas, por lo que decidió dejar de escribir poesía para centrarse en volver a escribir word fiction. Ok, muy bien.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Ah. Dagon o Dagan era la deidad principal de los filisteos que era adorada en Oriente Medio como el antiguo dios de la fertilidad y las cosechas. Mira. Ahí se sigue. Nada más. Muy bien. Sigamos.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Acá. August Derlet y los mitos de Cthulhu. Opa. Antologista estadounidense, era amigo de Lovecraft y publicó muchas de sus obras en su editorial, Arkham House. Arkham. Ok. Pese a que fue un personaje clave en hacer que las obras de Lovecraft saltaran a la fama, no está extenso de controversia. Una de sus acciones más cuestionadas es la introducción del concepto de la lucha del bien contra el mal. Ok. Nada más. Nada más. Hola. Ah, ahí. Supongo que... Ok.
It is at night,
Ay, volví.
especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine.
Uy.
But the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Odiaba el tabaco. Ah, aunque fumaba cuando tenía 12 años para intentar parecer adulto. En una carta enviada a su amigo Reinhard Kleiner, afirma que lo dejó en cuanto empezó a llevar pantalones largos. También tenía una opinión muy marcada con respecto al alcohol, tal y como queda patente en la carta que le envía a Saela Brown. El asunto de la vida... Ok... Ah, bueno, no le gustaba tomar tampoco. Muy bien. En resumen. Ok.
Often I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm.
Phantasm.
A mere freak of fever, as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war.
Claro.
This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment
Ay, no me muestres eso.
floundering in its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind.
Que no aparezca ningún bicho, por favor.
Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Nueva York. Oh.
The end is near.
Ahí. ¿Cómo?
I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
No, para. Nada para investigar. Bueno, me parece que no.
It shall not find me.
¿Y dónde te vas a acostar?
God, that hand.
¿Qué man? Ah.
The window. The window.
No me puedo. No me puedo mover. Ahora sí. Pequeña piscina de horror cósmico. Qué lindo. Hasta el próximo juego.